Hello there, Jose Rodriguez here. The other day we were out with Nathan and we decided to go to a local small historic museum in our area. And there in one of the big rooms was several walls displaying some prints. And they were framed 16 by 20s. The description said that they were created via an archival process. Of course, all that means is that they were probably printed with a large format Epson or Canon printer using pigment inks. That's all that means. And on good acid-free paper, maybe the framing is also acid-free. That's all that means. Anyway, basically the images were composites from newspaper images, um, text, all sorts of things. And it was kind of a political statement about the local urban displacement of certain groups of people. And of course, I didn't want to get into the political side of it, so I just looked at it until I realized that, wait a minute, these things are for sale. And it says unframed print, $500 a piece. Well, I thought, Lordy, first of all, these images would only appeal to a very narrow group of people. And to think that you were going to sell a 16 by 20 for $500, I know better. I know they were printed in a common, 17-inch wide, possibly, or larger pigment printer. Big deal. And possibly printed on some good paper, but, still not $500. So let's talk about selling your prints. Now, I'm not a huge print seller. I have more prints that I know what to do with. Yeah, if I was putting them out on display at various galleries, I may sell a few here and there. But a lot of them are of a personal nature, so they would not appeal to a regular person looking at, for prints to buy. Well, let's just cover how you would go about to figure out what should I charge for one of my prints. Okay. And that runs a pretty big gamut of possibilities. So let's just look at a few of my prints here. I just pulled these out of one of my big piles of prints. I did a wedding years ago, basically. A good friend of ours, you've seen that image. In fact, I'm going to show it to you a little bit later. But they had what I think this is a Bentley as a prop. They brought the bride in to this Italian villa, riding in this Bentley. Now, this is the harpist, and she's also one of the teachers at our local school a while back. She married this guy, and they were not part of the wedding party. Basically, she was a performer. He was just an attendee. And I say, hey, let's take a picture by the Bentley, and you can throw kisses at each other. So I did that. Well, guess what? They bought this print from me, and they had it framed, and it's hanging on their wall. Now, how do I price this? Well, many ways. You have some basic costs that you just cannot get away from, and then the rest is whatever you think your valuable time is worth. And of course, the object itself has intrinsic value, I guess, to the person buying it. But the net cost would be about $4 for a sheet of this paper. Okay, I won't say what it is. It is a matte OBA free paper, fine art, works beautifully with a pigment printer. So this is a pigment print. It could have been a 3800, a 3880, an R3000, whatever. It is 13-inch wide. So you would take the cost of your inks. In other words, remember it takes about 1 to 2 ml, I'll be really generous here, of total ink to print a letter size print, edge to edge. So you would do your computation, figure out what your cost per ml is, And this particular image has a lot of dark tones, so maybe it'll take 2.5 ml to print an equivalent letter size of this particular image. Well, this is bigger than letter size, so you would have to measure that, figure out your square inches, do the math, and figure out your ink costs. But that's not all. Remember, you have maintenance costs. Every time a printer runs a cleaning cycle, it's going to waste a couple of ml per cartridge. So you have to throw that in. Now, an ml of ink from Epson OEM may cost you, I don't know, $1.35. So let's say it takes 2 ml, that would be $2.70 worth of ink. What if you did a couple of test prints? You have to take that into consideration as well. Throw an extra ml in the mix per print, because that may take care of the maintenance that occasionally occurs or you may have to perform. So yeah, figure out your costs per ml to print a particular size print using a particular set of inks, whether it's OEM or, God forbid, third party. If you're selling, you need to use OEM. Forget about third party. If you use third party, you have to let the customer know, and then you have to actually bring down the price. I mean, come on. Let's get serious here. So in this case, I sold a 16 by 20 print in this configuration with wide enough borders for a signature and a date, and they framed it. I only charged them $50 because they were friends. So that means that, say, if my net cost for the print was $10, then I thought my time would be worth, I don't know, $25, and the rest is just intrinsic value added to the print because it is important to them. Some other person would not want that print whatsoever. Why? They don't know who the people are. So here is the actual wedding party of that particular wedding. And again, I did the same thing. I printed a larger print. This is just a test print that I did on the P800 when I first installed it. And you can see how beautiful it turned out. These blues are actually the real blues of the dress. Those are very difficult to reproduce on print. Again, I figured out the square inches. I knew what my ink cost per ml was, and I just did a calculation to figure out how much ink did it take, how many pennies worth of ink did it take to print this size image. The rest of it is then the paper cost. If I did not do any test printing, if I just edited it, hit print, and I got a perfect result, then that's it. But often you have to take any kind of testing into consideration. You will add a bit of cost per print to include all of that necessary testing to arrive at a certain result. Again, another personal image. This will be very valuable to them, not to anyone else. So this has intrinsic value only to them. So if my cost plus my time is, say, $30, and I tell them $60, they'll be glad to pay $60 for that print. Again, not $500. That's ridiculous. You know, sometimes people just get a little bit, their ego gets in the way. Now we're going to get into some images that are more impersonal, and images that will be very suitable for offices, hallways, and buildings, you know, businesses, that type of thing. Walter Reed Army Medical Center used to be the Bethesda Naval Center. All of their walls are just adorned by large, large prints. They look like they were originally done from film. And they drive me nuts because a lot of them are a little bit crooked. It's like, gosh, it would only take you seconds to fix that. But anyway, and again, they're not a type of image that will appeal to just one person. It appeals to the mass. So this is the type of image that you, if you want to sell to that type of genre, if you want to sell to that type of customer, office, dental offices, medical officers, law offices, commercial buildings, then you have to include a set of neutral images in your portfolio so that they can see what you are able to produce. So here's a nice image that would look good anywhere. Again, this was printed on Palo Duro, beautiful paper, and this will last forever, literally, even unprotected. It is that good. And of course, with good pigment OEM inks, this will last forever. The texture is so gorgeous, I would not want to put this under glass, even though under glass is always better. But here's an example of that. Watercolor paper, uncoated. This is the Cashtown Inn in Gettysburg, north of Gettysburg, in the town of Cashtown. Signed, ready to go. They would put that on their wall. In fact, they have. So there you go. This is something that they will not only buy, but also people who visit the area may want to buy this. And it is a painterly rendition of that image. Again, watercolor paper, painterly rendition of one of the cafes in Annapolis, in Maryland, the capital of Maryland. This looks like France to me. Again, they now have this picture on their wall. They bought it from me. It's a field in Gettysburg. Again, this is the type of thing that is non-personal. People may like to have this in their home. In fact, my daughter's in-laws have lots of prints on their walls that they have purchased from other people. So far, they only have a few from me. I just give those away to them. Of course, I will not charge them. Here's some leaves. Again, painterly effect. You see, that's not a personal type image. So you have to reach out to the right customer. Here's the State House in Annapolis. Done on fine. This is San Gabriel paper. Again, that will last forever. Here's another one. This will sell. This would be perfect for a doctor's office, a dental office, any kind of a law office even. And you can make this, 20 by 30. Charge $300, $400 for it. And they would have to pay for the framing. This will just be for the printing process. Again, pictorial photographs go very well in offices, that type of environment, the hallways between offices in an office building. All broken down windmill. Some of these are not mine. I'm not going to claim that they are mine, but I'm just giving you examples of what you could produce for sale to that type of customer. Half of an orange falling through water and captured with a strobe light. That's a beautiful high key subject that could print really large. Here's a beautiful sunset. Telephoto lens does magic. And again, this could be anywhere. You don't have to travel the world to capture something like this. A lot of it is done with post-processing. There goes the secret. Beautiful field, incredible storm coming. You can just see the rain just pouring down there. Best to get the heck out of Dodge, as they say. Again, this will be a beautiful, huge mural at an office anywhere in the world. Same thing here, nice graphic looking picture. It almost looks black and white, but it's actually full color. It just has no color. The chili peppers. Flowers, landscapes, that type of subject. Graphic things fits perfectly for the office building type environment. Anything personal will be only valuable to that person. Even something like this. This is my grandson, my son. They're having their own little private time in the woods. See, you don't see the faces. So this could be a beautiful picture, say in a pediatric office for a pediatric doctor. Okay? So that should give you some ideas. Again, paper cost, and you need to do some math and figure out your ink costs, okay, including testing and including those pesky maintenance cycles, cleaning cycles that you may have to perform once in a while, especially if you don't print often, which you should be doing anyway. So that is it. Paper costs, ink costs, and then your time, and then you could tack on intrinsic value to the print. In other words, is this work of art that you created worth something extra besides your time, your ink costs, your maintenance costs? Okay, and paper, of course. And of course, you have to take into account the initial investment of the printer. I forgot to throw that into the mix. That is very important because several years down the road, you may have to spend another $2,000 on a brand new printer. So you have to take that into account. And what is it? Amortization. Yes, something like that. Anyway, I'm not a CPA, so that is it. With that little bit of information, you should be able to figure out a good pricing strategy for your work if you decide to start selling. All right, thank you so much. Don't forget to subscribe, share, and like. And until the next time, happy printing and hopefully happy selling of your prints. Bye-bye.